Everyone says the same thing. Give it time. You will forget about it. Nobody else even remembers, so why do you? I believed that for years. It sounds reasonable. Time heals. Memories fade. That is how the brain is supposed to work. But something never made sense to me. If embarrassment fades like every other memory, why do people in their 60s still cringe over something they said in high school? Why does a successful adult suddenly feel their face flush remembering a joke that landed badly 15 years ago? Nobody else remembers. Nobody is judging them anymore. Yet their brain brings the memory back, fully loaded, at 2 in the morning for no apparent reason. Ordinary memories fade. What you ate last Thursday, or the plot of a movie you watched 2 years ago, slowly disappears. Embarrassing memories seem to do the opposite. The more you wish they would vanish, the more vivid they become. So I started looking into why. What I discovered is that your brain is not malfunctioning. It is not weak, dramatic, or unable to let go. It is running an ancient survival system that evolved long before modern life, a system designed to protect your place inside a group. Once you understand how that system works, those painful flashbacks stop feeling like evidence that something is wrong with you. Before I explain the mechanism, there is one question we need to answer. What exactly is a memory? Not metaphorically, mechanically. A memory is not a video file stored somewhere inside your brain. It is a pattern of connections between neurons, and most of what happens to you never becomes a lasting memory. Your brain constantly edits your experiences, throwing away the overwhelming majority of them. If it did not, you would spend your life buried under decades of grocery lists, weather reports, and random conversations. So the real question is not why embarrassing memories do not fade. It is why your brain decides this one deserves to survive, while thousands of ordinary moments disappear. The answer begins with a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Its primary job is detecting threats, not only physical dangers like predators or speeding cars, but social threats as well. For most of human history, those two things were closely connected. Humans evolved in small groups of roughly 30 to 150 people, a number supported by anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research. Your survival depended on remaining part of that group. Being humiliated, rejected, or seen as unreliable was not just emotionally painful, it could reduce your chances of receiving protection, food, or support. Your amygdala does not know it is 2026. It does not know you have a phone, a car, or countless opportunities to meet new people. As far as this ancient piece of your brain is concerned, social humiliation still carries life or death significance. The moment it detects a kind of threat, it launches a rapid biological response. Your adrenal glands release cortisol and noradrenaline. Your heart rate increases. Blood flow shifts. Your face flushes into the familiar human blush that Charles Darwin called the most peculiar and the most human of all expressions. At the same time, noradrenaline acts on another structure called the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for converting short-term experiences into long-term memories. Its message is simple. This matters. Do not lose it. Researchers call this emotional memory enhancement. For decades, neuroscientist James McGough and others have shown that emotionally charged experiences, especially negative ones, are stored with greater strength and detail than neutral events. Your brain is not remembering embarrassing moments, despite its filtering system. It is remembering them because of it. So here is the mechanism in plain English. Your brain treats social humiliation as a survival threat, so it deliberately stores the memory with unusual strength to help you avoid making the same mistake again. That is why embarrassing moments replay so vividly. What you are experiencing is not a malfunction. It is a process psychologists often describe as involuntary memory rehearsal, your brain repeatedly reviewing an event it believes is important for your future survival. The strange part is that the system is working exactly as designed. The problem is that it was designed for a world that no longer exists. Thousands of years ago, saying the wrong thing in front of your tribe could genuinely threaten your place within the group. Today, Saying something awkward during a meeting or at a dinner party usually carries no lasting consequences. But your brain has not updated its operating manual. It still reacts with the same urgency. That is why the emotional response often feels wildly out of proportion to what actually happened. But there is another layer that makes these memories even harder to escape. Your brain does not just store the event, it stores the feeling, and every time that feeling is triggered, the memory becomes easier to find. One of the key players here is a region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or DACC. Research led by neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA found that social rejection and physical pain activate many of the same brain regions, including the DACC. In other words, your brain does not make a sharp distinction between being physically hurt and being socially rejected. That is why an embarrassing memory does not feel like remembering a fact. It feels like briefly reliving the pain. Each replay creates a small echo of the original emotional experience, which is why you instinctively cringe even years later. But that still does not explain why the memory keeps returning on its own. For that, we need another psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. In the 1920s, psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik noticed that waiters remember unpaid orders remarkably well. The moment the bill was paid, those details quickly disappeared from memory. Her conclusion was simple. The human mind clings to unfinished experiences far more than completed ones. Embarrassing moments almost always feel unfinished. You never got to say the better response. You never corrected the mistake. You never rewrote the conversation in the way you wished you had. As far as your nervous system is concerned, the event never reached a satisfying conclusion. So instead of filing it away as finished, your brain keeps reopening the file, searching for a resolution that no longer exists. Unfortunately, most people make the situation even worse. They try not to think about it. That sounds sensible, but psychology shows the opposite happens. This is known as ironic process theory, developed by psychologist Daniel Wegner. In his famous white bear experiments, participants were instructed not to think about a white bear. Almost everyone failed. More importantly, the harder they tried to suppress the thought, the more frequently it returned. Your brain has to keep checking whether you are thinking about something to stop you from thinking about it. Ironically, that monitoring process keeps bringing the thought back. The same thing happens with embarrassing memories. Every time you tell yourself, "Do not think about that," your brain quietly asks, "Am I thinking about it?" And the answer keeps becoming yes. By this point, three different systems are working together. First, your amygdala marked the event as a survival threat and strengthened the memory. Second, your brain linked that memory to pain-related circuits, making each replay emotionally intense. Third, your attempt to suppress it unintentionally keeps the memory active. None of these systems is broken. They are all doing exactly what evolution designed them to do. The only problem is that they are solving yesterday's survival challenges in today's world. Let us call her Maria. 8 years ago, during a graduate seminar, she made an offhand comment about a classmate's research. It came out harsher than she intended. The room went quiet for a couple of seconds. Then the professor continued, and everyone moved on. Everyone except Maria. She thought about it that night in bed. Weeks later, it resurfaced in the shower. Years later, married, successful, living in a different city, she would be loading the dishwasher when the memory suddenly returned with perfect clarity. The same words, the same silence, the same sinking feeling in her stomach. For years, she fought the memory the only way she knew how. She tried to push it away. She distracted herself. She told herself to stop being ridiculous. It never worked. The harder she resisted, the more stubborn the memory became. What finally changed was not the memory itself. It was her relationship to it. A therapist introduced Maria to a technique called self-distancing. The idea felt strange at first. Instead of replaying the event from inside the experience, she learned to observe it almost as if she were talking about someone else. Within a few weeks, she noticed something surprising. The memory still appeared. But the emotional wave that followed was not as powerful. After a few months, the memory had not disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. It felt less like reliving the moment and more like looking at an old photograph. Recognizable, real, but no longer dangerous. That distinction changed everything. She did not need to erase the memory. She only needed to stop fearing it. So what actually works? The first technique is the one Maria practiced: self-distancing. Psychologist Ethan Kross, director of the Emotion and Self-Control Lab at the University of Michigan, has spent years studying how people manage difficult thoughts. His research found that one surprisingly small change can reduce emotional intensity. When the memory appears, stop narrating it as I. Instead, use your own name. Rather than saying, "I cannot believe I said that," say, "Maria felt embarrassed when she said that, and it is understandable that she still remembers it." That tiny linguistic shift creates psychological distance, allowing you to examine the memory without becoming overwhelmed by it. Simple does not mean ineffective. Research consistently shows it helps people regulate difficult emotions more effectively. The second strategy is almost the opposite of what most people instinctively do. Do not immediately force the memory away. Suppression keeps the mental search active. Instead, postpone it. Choose a specific 10-minute period each day as your thinking time. When the memory appears outside that window, simply tell yourself, "I will think about this at 7 o'clock. You are not denying the thought. You are giving it an appointment. Ironically, many people discover that by the time the appointment arrives, the urgency has already faded. The third technique is expressive writing. Psychologist James Pennebaker's research has repeatedly shown that writing about emotionally difficult experiences can reduce intrusive thoughts over time. Spend 15 to 20 minutes writing the entire event from beginning to end. What happened, how you felt, what you wish had happened instead. Turning the experience into a complete narrative helps your brain treat it as something processed rather than unfinished. Think back to the Zeigarnik effect. An unpaid bill stays on your mind. Once it is paid, your brain lets it go. Writing is one way of paying that psychological bill. Finally, try naming what is happening in the moment. When the memory surfaces, quietly remind yourself, "This is my amygdala doing its job." That single sentence changes the meaning of the experience. Instead of interpreting the memory as evidence that something is wrong with you, you recognize it for what it really is: an ancient survival system trying, perhaps a little too enthusiastically, to protect you. Here is one of the most fascinating parts of this entire process. Your brain is already trying to weaken these memories every single night while you sleep. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker and other sleep researchers have found that during REM sleep, the brain repeatedly replays emotional memories. But unlike when the memory was first formed, levels of noradrenaline, the stress chemical that helped stamp the memory into your brain, dropped to their lowest point of the entire day. That combination matters. The brain rehearses the event while removing much of its emotional charge. Over time, it can preserve the lesson while gradually softening the pain attached to it. Walker has described this process as a kind of overnight emotional therapy. Your brain is quietly doing the work of healing while you are asleep. That is also why poor sleep can make embarrassing memories feel far more intense. Studies have shown that sleep deprivation leaves the amygdala significantly more reactive to emotional experiences. If you have ever noticed that old memories hit harder when you are exhausted, that is not your imagination. It is biology. Protecting your sleep is not just about feeling rested. It is one of the most effective ways your brain naturally regulates emotional memories. And that leads to a broader realization. For most of human history, embarrassing moments did not stay unresolved for years. People lived in small communities. If you said something awkward, you saw those same people the next morning. You apologized. Someone left. Life moved on. Your nervous system witnessed that you were still accepted by the group. Modern life rarely offers that kind of closure. You make an awkward comment during a meeting. Everyone goes home. Some people you may never see again. Your brain never receives the clear signal that the danger has passed. The alarm stays active because, from your brain's perspective, the story never truly ended. That is not a personal flaw. It is an ancient survival system operating in a world very different from the one it evolved for. Understanding that changes the question. Instead of asking, "Why cannot I let this go?" you can ask, "What is my brain trying to protect me from?" That is a far more useful question. So here is something I would encourage you to do tonight. Choose one embarrassing memory, one that still makes you cringe. Write down exactly what happened, what you said, what you felt, what you wish you had done differently. Spend 15 minutes telling the whole story without censoring yourself. Then read it back once, using your own name instead of I. You may notice something subtle. Not that the memory disappears, but it feels a little lighter, a little more finished. That is your brain beginning to process the experience instead of endlessly reopening it. I also want to be honest about something. None of these techniques erases the memory. Your brain does not have a delete button for experiences that once felt important to your survival. The goal was never forgetting. The goal is to change your relationship with the memories so that it no longer controls your emotions whenever it appears. That takes practice, not one journaling session, not one good night's sleep. Weeks of gradually teaching your brain that the danger has passed. And if these memories become so frequent or intense that they interfere with your sleep, relationships, or daily life, especially alongside persistent anxiety or intrusive thoughts, that is a good reason to speak with a qualified mental health professional. Understanding the mechanism is incredibly helpful, but it is not a substitute for professional care when you need it. So the next time an embarrassing memory appears out of nowhere, in the shower, while driving, or halfway through dinner, I want you to remember what is actually happening. You are not weak. You are not broken. Your brain is running an ancient survival program that once kept human beings alive. It simply has not learned that today's social mistakes rarely carry yesterday's consequences. You may never silence that alarm completely, but once you understand why it is ringing, you no longer have to mistake its volume for the truth about who you are. If you are fascinated by the hidden mechanics of how the mind works, that is exactly what this channel is about. We will keep exploring them together.